Hey everyone, I know this isn't my usual type of content. I normally try to focus specifically on Dungeons & Dragons, but I have thought about shifting this to more of a fantasy discussion channel and just talking about everything to do with fantasy, because I'll be honest with you, as much as I love Dungeons & Dragons, it's one of my favorite things of all time. There's only so much Dungeons & Dragons content that you can make 3 videos a week out of, so I don't know, but the only channel I could think to put this discussion on, because quite frankly I'm tired of seeing this dumb shit, was this channel. So this is where it's going. You know, I understand it's not D&D, but hey, it can't all be D&D, I guess, right?
Riser, double.
I take how much damage? So, I was scrolling through Twitter, which is probably one of the worst places you should ever scroll in your entire life, and I came across this really dog shit tweet. Now, the first tweet that I want to show you guys is actually this one. This is from a D&D meme page, and they say, accepting the existence of magic in a fantasy setting should not be easier than accepting the existence of disabled people in a fantasy setting. And I fully agree with this. I believe that this really weird fight to take disabled people out of fantasy has been just absolutely bizarre. I didn't even know that this was a thing. As far as I know, this is like a new type of batshit argument that like anti-diverse, anti-woke, right-wing weirdos fucking argue for. It's come completely out of nowhere. I've literally never heard anybody have problems with disabled people within fantasy before until like 2 months ago. But yeah, so this entire conversation, this entire discussion has been, should disabled people be in fantasy? The answer is obviously, by the way, but I wanted to go over what is quite possibly the dumbest argument that I've seen to this kind of thing. So this guy, Montreal McCall, who's apparently a YouTuber, comedian, according to his bio, post, imagine a world of magic. Okay. Now imagine a world with disabled people. Easy enough. Now imagine they're in the same world. Wait, why wouldn't people just use magic to cure all disabilities? Wow, you're fine with magic, but not disabilities? You lack imagination. Now, at first, when I first saw this, I thought that he was on our side, because very obviously, if you're fine with magic but not disabilities, you do lack imagination. You have absolutely no imagination. I would hate to see a book that you write, because it would probably be dull as shit. But no, as it turns out, he's actually a fucking idiot, because he followed up that tweet with, people who engross themselves in fiction want to be immersed and thus will complain when their suspension of disbelief is pushed far enough that it ruins their immersion. Stop ruining immersion. If you want disabled people that badly, make it make sense to the world. Now, this is an odd thing to say, because the existence of magic does not immediately mean the removal of conflict or consequence. And the reason I'm saying conflict or consequence instead of the removal of disabled people is because that's what having a disability is. Well-written magic systems, like for example the inheritance cycle, tell you that magic can only do as much as the person's body is able to do. It's actually one of my favorite magic systems in all of fiction. But in any kind of world, magic has limitations. If magic is unlimited, if magic can do anything, then the world that you exist in is boring. Pretending like fantasy, and even high magic fantasy, having disabled people is some sort of immersion breaker just showcases exactly how little you understand about storytelling and world building. There are hundreds, if not thousands of reasons for you to have magic in your world, but still have disabled people. perhaps the ability to heal things magically is very limited, as it is in many worlds. Most of the time, the healing that healing magic can provide is normally only skin deep, doing basic things like stitching up organs or something like that. But you can't do things like connect nerve endings or repair bones faster, or even replace bones that might have been taken away. Even in a world that has shit world building like Harry Potter, there were limits on what magic could do to fix disabilities. That's why Harry wore glasses, because there was no magic spell that could fix his sight. And whenever his bones all disappeared, they had to do some regrowing bone juice, and that ended up crippling him for a little while. These are just a couple of the things that you have to understand whenever it comes to magic systems. And almost every magic system, almost every well-written magic system has limitations. On top of that, you could come across plenty of disabled people in a magic-based world because magic often costs money. Just because magic exists doesn't mean that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can do it, and even if they could, it doesn't mean they're all good at it. One of the core fundamentals of common fantasy tropes is that only certain people can perform magic, and the performing of magic is extremely costly. Even badly written fantasy stories have limitations on magic, and this is one of the main things that is like we have to keep explaining, apparently. I personally believe that anyone who says that people with disabilities existing in a magical world can break immersion or isn't realistic, which is the funniest fucking thing I've ever heard. It's not realistic in the world of magic. Any kind of people who say that, I believe, are just arguing in bad faith and just hate the idea that disabled people exist. And disabilities don't just stop at wheelchairs. They stop at things like not being able to fucking see. For me personally, I'm deaf in my right ear, not being able to hear, people who are missing an arm, things like that. Just because a disabled person exists within a magical world, it doesn't mean it breaks your immersion unless you're a fucking idiot. And again, a lot of this has to do with the fact that you just don't understand how magic systems in fantasy worlds work on a regular basis. Most, if not all, magic systems have these limitations in place, and these limitations can stop you from doing extreme things like healing nerve endings or restoring sight and sound, or even restoring a limb. If some dude gets his arm cut off and the arm gets lost to a dragon, there's not necessarily going to be a spell that can regrow a fully functioning arm. But that's why we have things like steampunk and other mechanical things that fit into fantasy. Like, honestly, this is just legitimately one of those things that I just don't understand how you could have. I don't understand how you could claim to be a fan of fantasy and then have the stance that disabled people in fantasy ruins your immersion. It's just bad story writing, bad storytelling, bad everything. It's absolutely bad. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I'm sorry that this was like I said, a little bit more rambly, not exactly Dungeons and Dragons related, but I didn't know what other channel to put this on, and that's what it was. So thank you guys for stopping by. Let me know what you think down below. I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.